Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. Today we are finishing up the first parak of Terumot and moving on to the first Mishnah in the second parak. So the last Mishnah in the first parak of Terumot is actually quite a bit of a help because it explains the general rule that we've been discussing in the first parak, as we're going to see. Mishnah Yod, Ein Tormin Midavar Shenigmar Malachto Al Davar Shelo Nigmar Malachto. We do not take a truma from something that its work is completed, it's the finished product, onto something that the work is not finished. The Barton Lura here brings there's a scriptural support for this concept. Shelo Nidmareach Bekri, hasn't been smoothed out. The pile of grain is not smooth, and in a finished pile, there's a pasuk in Bidbar, Kedogon Minagurin, Ukamlea Minayekiv, like grain from the gorin. Now the gorin is the granary where you store the finished product when you've already processed and smoothed out the pile of finished grain. Ukamlea Minayekiv is the fullness of the vat. The yekiv is the lower vat where the wine is ripening. Really, it's grape juice that's fermenting into wine, and it's malaya, it's full, it's like the finished product. So the pasuk already hints to us the truma should be from the finished product. The Mishnah continues, Lo medavar shlo nigmar malachto, davar shnigmar malachto, and we don't separate truma from an item that's not finished to exempt from truma an item that is finished. V'lo medavar shlo nigmar malachto, davar shlo nigmar malachto, and not from an item that's unfinished to another item that's unfinished. V'im tarmu trumat and truma. And the Mishnah here concludes, but if he did take truma from these different states of finishing, it is a valid truma. Now that's going to raise some eyebrows, because in Mishnah Dalit, we said that specifically from zaytim al shemen, from raw olives onto olive oil, or from raw grapes onto wine, we said that does not work. We said it does not work. Now, the reason there is that we said that there is a pseida lekohen. We said in Mishnah Chet there's a loss to the kohen because typically olives and grapes were used in liquid form. That was sort of the normal way to consume olives and grapes, was as a liquid. So it's typically they would be processed into liquid. So to give this truma to a kohen that's just grapes or just olives was out of the ordinary and was a loss because typically people would need to process them into the finished product. There's a deeper level here that's not only when you give somebody something, you want to give them something useful, and this comes up Purim time. Purim time, if you send a piece of raw meat to someone, as long as it's salted and ready to cook, technically you're yotzei shalach manot with the raw meat, but it's the minhag is to send something that is actually usable for the Suda of Purim, and you don't want to send people raw meat and they're shopping around with it, but it's technically possible. So in Truma to the Kohen, the same situation. There is an opinion, it's a minority opinion, that Truma deraita applies not to grapes and olives, but to the wine and the oil. So there is that element too, but we see here that taking things from different situations of processing, it's b'diavad at best, but for grapes and olives, apparently, the other Mishnah would say it does not work. Good, let's start the second parak. Ein tormin mi tahor ala tamei. We don't separate truma from a pure item that has not touched something tamei and become contaminated onto something that's tamei. The Bartner says that the reason is we're afraid because we need to take truma from mukaf, from things that are close together. Mukaf is close together, and a person knows one thing is tamei, one thing is tahor, is going to be afraid to put them in proximity to one another with good reason. You don't want to tamei up the tahor stuff. So we say, we're not going to have you separating out tahor. Of course, you want to give the kohen truma tahora, because truma tamei can only be used as fuel, while truma tahora is actually the real stuff that's edible. The Mishnah says, im tarmu trumatan truma. If you went ahead and took from tahor, so he's giving to the kohen tahor, that is valid, even though lechatchila we don't want you to do that because you might not take it from the mukaf, from next to each other. The emet amru, and in truth they said, so this is the halacha, ha'igul shel deveila shenitma miktsato, a cake of pressed figs that's part of it got tamei. So these are a bunch of figs, dried out figs that are all squished together into one big block. And there are situations where it's possible that some of the block becomes tamei, because it's like a big mass of individual figs, but some of it's tahor. So in this case, Torah min tahor sheyeshbo ala tamei sheyeshbo. You can certainly take truma from the tahor side onto the tamei. So if this was a cake of 100 figs squished together, and the left side was tamei, so just take 2 figs from the right side and give it to the kohen. Those ones are tahor. Great. We're not worried that you're not going to bring them together. They're already pushed together, so they're already squished together. Ken the gudash yerek. So too a bundle of vegetables. The ken arema, or vegetables or produce that's all in one pile. It's already together, and part of it's tamei, so take from the tahor out, give the tahor to the kohen. Hayu shnei igulim, but if you had 2 cakes of pressed figs, shtei agudel, they're 2 bundles of vegetables, shtei aremot, 2 piles, achat tamei, achat tahora, one is pure, one is impure. Lo yitra mizayel, you can't take truma one to another, because again, the person's going to be very reluctant to bring these things close together in proximity and take minamukaf. Even we're not concerned that he's not going to put things close together. Eliezer says people will come and put things close together without having them touch, and that's still good. It's still in proximity. Halach is not like Rabbi Eliezer, though logically we do understand his statement. Shkoyach Rabotai.